HealthWish is a series of conversations about the state of healthcare in New York City's fabulous fifth borough, Staten Island. Our goal is to raise issues, raise awareness, and raise health. Because when we raise health, we raise everyone. Dr. Ardolic, Vito Fosella, and Mike Cusick are fostering a healthy Staten Island, supporting healthy kids and sports, building new facilities, and creating opportunities to raise the health of everyone who lives and visits here. Give it a listen.
Mike, I want to ask you a little about youth sports.
Sure.
Because I think it's one of these things, we talk about health all the time. Childhood obesity has become one of the biggest plagues of our society, right? That's just a reality, and unhealthy kids sadly often become unhealthy adults, and some people do figure it out as they get older, but a lot of them don't. A lot of them are really plagued by chronic illnesses throughout their life. And on Staten Island, we've seen an explosion of interest in youth sports. I mean, youth sports was always a big deal from the time I was in Tottenville High School, right? But now, you know, you see more and more interest in activity, and how do you keep fostering that, and how do we keep growing that?
Yeah, and you know, youth sports has always been a staple of Staten Island, right? Even growing up, you know, we were in CYO, we were in Westerly Little Guys baseball, we were in all the leagues. As a former elected and as a current elected, that's where you really get to know people too, is at these gatherings of kids. It's neighborhoods coming together. Like anything though, there's a business end to this too. You know, there's a lot of travel teams now, but also too the issue of where the kids are gonna play. And that's something that we're looking at the SIEDC too. You know, we've been working with Borough Hall on a number of ideas of, you know, athletic type recreational facilities that could be put here that aren't necessarily city or state funded, but private entities. And I think that goes back to your previous question. That's what's going to keep people on Staten Island.
Yep.
So Mike talks about travel, right? You know, when I was a kid, the idea of travel consisted of, do you go from South Beach to Midland Beach? That was travel. Now people get in a car and will drive for 5 hours to a hockey match or lacrosse. So we always have to adapt. And I look at it fundamentally is that every child should have an opportunity to do something, and every child is good at something. So if you can just give that kid access, even if the family may not be able to afford it, there are ways in which we could help, for lack of a better word, subsidize that opportunity. One of the drawbacks, frankly, has been the cost of building some of these fields or identifying. It's not to say we don't want it or recognize it. It takes a long time and a lot of money to get it going.
Which is huge. Having the facilities, not being able to use them is almost worse than not having the facilities.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's right.
If your kid is, you know, an exceptional athlete, it comes naturally to them. They seem to find their way to sports. I think it's important, though, for all the parents, if you're a parent and you're out there listening to this, getting your kid exposed to some kind of a physical activity, it's going to give them more time on their feet walking around and less time sitting down staring at a screen. I promise you, no matter what you do, they're going to spend a substantial portion of their time staring at a screen. Anything you can do that's going to reduce that percentage is going to keep them healthier over the course of their lives. So I think it's one of these things that we always have to think about.
I think we learn over time that, yeah, get that kid out of the house. You know, maybe 20 years ago was, oh, my son's watching video games all day long. Let's encourage them, because that kid is going to be 25 and 45 and 55 one day, and you want to get them into good, healthy habits at an early age. We're going to have the first flag football, talk about something that wasn't around 30 years ago. And again, we're going to try to get the PSAL league into intermediate schools. Right now it exists for high schools, but the more we can drive these organized, coordinated sports teams into the younger grades. But I have to say, one element is you get kids off the streets and doing something productive and constructive, as opposed to the potential of them getting caught up with some bad stuff. And frankly, in intermediate school is when kids can start to drift in a bad direction. So it's important for us to keep an eye on that as well.
So I'm going to change gears a little bit. I wanted to talk a little bit about the future. One of the things I love about being responsible for Staten Island University Hospital is kind of the legacy of what it entails. Something that started out in a house, and then, like most hospitals around the 1880s, 1890s, moved into some old brick building. And then, like most places, at some point in the 50s, 60s, They would either renovate that place or then move into a new place and actually modernize, only to now be stuck in a situation where they have to modernize again. And that's kind of where we are now. A couple of new buildings opening, modernization going on everywhere. The technology now costs more than the actual buildings themselves. So we're all kind of in the same place. But frankly, I think what I live every day in terms of a hospital that's trying to open new buildings while trying to preserve its past is no different than the rest of society, right? So I'm going to start with Mike on this one because I think it's one of the things I know you've tried to do with the SIEDC is to try to be very mindful of what makes Staten Island special. And yet at the same time to understand that we have to continue to develop towards a future.
The SIEDC, and particularly in the year and a half I've now been there, that's part of what we're trying to do is look forward. And part of our mission is to attract business here that would fit the fabric of Staten Island. People know who we are off of Staten Island. There are businesses looking at Staten Island because we are part of New York City and we're part of that fabric. So people want a location within the city limits. And Staten Island is a perfect place for a lot of these businesses. And part of what we're working with Borough Hall on is many cities about the size of Staten Island get solicitations about what a great place it would be to bring your business. Staten Island is part of a greater region. And we're very excited at the SIEDC to work with partners like the hospital to go forward on these future endeavors.
And I would say that someone whose family actually came here in the 1800s, around the time that the Staten Island Hospital was first built, and tracking it, and you look back once again this preservation concept of remembering where you come from, but the necessity to adapt and to be looking around the corner. And I really would like to commend you personally, but also the Northwell system. You've done nothing but make those capital investments that have inured to the benefit of the people of Staten Island with new wings. The first time, correct me if I'm wrong, like a pediatric cancer center, where a kid with cancer will be under one roof for the first time ever and get the treatment and not have to be scared and run behind a curtain in order to do that. That was a decision made years ago, and now we're seeing the results of that. And Staten Island families will be better off because of it. And we will continue to say, how do we make it better? What do we need to do to make it better? What do you need to make it better? You need an MRI machine, or do you need new personnel? I think the two hospitals combined on Staten Island employ 8,100 or so people. Each year, if thousands of kids leave Staten Island, they become, my view, they're like Staten Island's best brand ambassadors. They go to some of the best schools in the country. They're great. They always look forward to coming home. We have to figure out a way to keep as many as we can on Staten Island to build a future, but to create this climate and foster a climate that it's good to do business here and to stay, once again, stay on Staten Island. And we have to figure out ways in which we can make that work best.
It's funny because I've been asked several times, why do I care so much about this topic? And it's really interesting that for me, if you look at Northwell on Staten Island, about 74% of our employees live on Staten Island, right? Which is an incredibly high number. Those are the people that we tend to build the bigger, longer term relationships with and actually stay with us for the most part. It's not 100% true, but it's definitely more true when you actually look at it. As you go into the harder to find jobs, those percentages start to go down. And some of it is you have to give these kids opportunities to come back to Staten Island if they've gotten specialty training, if they've gone and learned how to split the atom somewhere. You got to give them a chance to come back here, because they are the people that are the most likely to take the jobs on Staten Island. And I don't hire just doctors and nurses. I hire everything from stationary engineers to pharmacy techs to PCAs to accountants to anything else. Having places where those young people want to live, for instance, having places where those people can actually feel comfortable, shop, whatever it is, all those things are important, because at the end of the day, it helps all business on Staten Island.
So when you think of a hospital, the first thing that pops into your head isn't housing, right? But it gets back to health and quality of life. Because if you're sitting on a bus for an hour and a half each way, that diminishes your quality of life. That diminishes your mental well-being. So how do we get it that we don't have to have that and create more synergies where you benefit by having people locally filling that job, and the person comes back from college or as his master's or PhD, says, you know what, I got a job 3 miles from my house, and I can live, and I don't have to worry about a commute, I don't have to worry about a toll, and I'm home by whatever time to spend more time with my kids. That's how we try to look through that prism, and working with Michael, working with you, and others. That's I hope, should be our goal.
Definitely.
Yep, that's it. It's the whole picture, right? How you get people to want to stay here and to work here is, what does Staten Island provide? And this is the best place to work and to live and to raise a family.
But all things are relative, and I tell people all the time, it's like, listen, if you're going to make a career here, you're happy, and you're not on here, consider coming. And if you're currently here and you're getting on a ferry or you're crossing a bridge every single day, you really have to ask yourself, well, why am I doing that? Does the opportunity exist on Staten Island? And interestingly, often the answer to that question is yes. People just haven't looked. And other times the answer is, well, not yet. Not no, but not yet.
Right. And I think also with things, whether it's a job or school, it's an attitude or a mindset, right? You got to believe that anything is possible.
Thanks for everything. This was a lot of fun. Thank you to Historic Richmond Town. I mean, we couldn't have a nicer setting. It's really nice. That fire is real, by the way. It's nice and warm.
Yes, it is.
Feels good.
Spend some time here. It's an amazing place. Somebody recently described it as Narnia to me. And I actually think that there's some of it that's actually true. You get to walk around a beautiful place and you will be very surprised by how pretty and how picturesque this place actually is. It's just amazing. Thank you for everything.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye, Staten Island.
HealthWish wishes to thank our special guest, Dr. Brahim Ardolic, Borough President Vito Fosella, and President of the SIEDC, Mike Cusick. Recorded at the Guy and Lake Tyson House in historic Richmond Town. We're very interested in your health wish. Contact us at healthwish@northwell.edu. Thanks for joining us. We hope to see you again soon.